Hey everybody. So I am here today. This is on my channel. I'm Joel from Indie Intellect, but this isn't on the Indie Intellect channel, as you obviously know because you're watching it on my channel. So I appreciate that. Now today I am going to be talking with somebody I've known for a long time. He's my brother. We have known each other, pretty much all our lives. So we're going to be chatting. He is the host of a Facebook page called Tedcore and the Voice of Reason. Today he is just a scary dark head talking to us, but we're going to be talking about as things, very similar to what Daniel and I are always talking about on Indie Intellect, new media. But we're going to be talking about how Hollywood is kind of a bunch of hypocrites sometimes. They have a lot of opinions, but they don't control their. You'll get we'll get into that. So I'm going to introduce Ted from Tedcore and the Voice of Reason. What's up, Ted?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Doing all right. Looking forward to this conversation. So Ted, tell us a little bit about your page and kind of what you talk about on your page before we jump into it.
Well, Tedcore and the Voice of Reason is a joint venture between myself and my brother, i.e. you, and
Oh, thank you.
it's sort of it's both a thinking channel, a ranting channel, devil's advocate channel. It's an outlet for frustration. Anything that kind of goes along with the things that you and I have been talking about for 10 or 15 years, if
Yeah,
not
for
longer.
decades at this point.
Yeah. For instance, the hypocrisy of Hollywood actors screaming for gun control, yet you have Liam Neeson, who's 6 movies deep in nonstop gun movies. They
Yeah,
label
complete
it
shoot
an
'em ups.
they label it an action flick, but it's nonstop gun action, nonstop
Yeah,
gun play, nonstop gun fire.
right.
Hollywood,
Nonstop double action.
yeah, as opposed to single action,
Right, exactly.
rollback operated.
So
Anyway,
yeah, so Liam Neeson's recently made some what we would call controversial or maybe even stupid statements about guns, right?
go both. Yeah, he was. I don't have the information right in front of me, and for those of you that are unaware, we're kind of winging it. So if I don't have exact numbers and dates, and the voice of reason here doesn't either, just gonna have to deal with it. But he said something to the effect of Americans need to be more like England and give up their guns. There's too much gun violence, which is the most retarded phrase I think I've ever heard applied to firearms. Um, Violence is violence.
Right,
Our
violence is violence.
I personally have never been shot, and I've had a couple of occasions where people tried to stab me. But let's be honest, uh, if I'm gonna die in a violent fashion, I would rather just get shot. Um, I don't want to spend 10 minutes at the bottom of a dog pile getting kicked to death
Right.
or bleed out from being stabbed with a broken bottle. You know, and of course, people like Liam Neeson, they live in their own little worlds. They have no concept of the average person in the average town.
Right.
Uh,
You
now
know,
that
I would play the devil's advocate a little bit. I mean, I can understand how some people are uncomfortable with guns. They may not have grown up with guns in the house. They may not have fired them. They may be a mystery to them. People are kind of afraid of things they don't necessarily understand. So I can understand people not uh, being comfortable with owning a gun themselves, or even necessarily being around someone that they know is carrying because they just don't understand it, and that's legitimate. Um, but I think that people come from a place of fear sometimes, and try to use that fear to control other people. And what do you think about that?
Oh, it's most definitely the case. It doesn't matter if you're talking about Islamophobia or gun control, or how the liberal left wing loves to attack Christians and conservatives, because fundamentally they know that we're disciplined people, that we're not a violent culture. So they say, oh, well, you guys have got guns, so you're violent, but they'll rail against us knowing full well that 99.99% of us have the discipline, the self control, the respect for life, the respect for our own values to not take a violent approach to them.
Yeah, it's true. That's the way I see it anyway. Um, let's talk a little bit about Hollywood. So Liam Neeson has made these comments and he feels a certain way. I noticed though that he doesn't that those feelings don't prevent him from being in movies. Like he has these strong convictions. Okay, somebody has strong convictions. Cool. I am for people having strong convictions, talking about them and acting on them. Um, acting, no pun intended, his movies tend to involve a lot of violence and a lot of guns. So
Yes,
how does one have such a strong conviction about something and then move so far in the opposite direction as far as their professional life? It's like saying I'm a vegetarian, but I'm going to be a butcher. You know,
yeah,
it's just my work. It's just my job. You shouldn't eat animals, but I'm going to be a butcher and provide that for you. But I don't think you should consume it.
exactly. Uh,
Nothing
for
against vegetarians. Nothing against butchers. Like them both.
yeah, and I'm not afraid to offend someone by accident or on purpose. But let's just say this: uh, I don't believe in abortion. So if I was an actor, you would never see me in a movie where I portrayed myself as an abortion practitioner,
Right.
and providing excuses for abortion. Now, before everybody goes off the rails and starts talking about how, well, you're a Christian, so you're anti abortion, um, saying that I'm a Christian, so I'm anti abortion is about the same as saying that I'm from America, so I ride a horse because all Americans are cowboys.
You don't ride a
Also,
horse?
I've ridden them. I didn't like it.
Yeah,
Uh,
either. I'm terrible at it. I'd make a
uh,
bad cowboy.
but the point being is if you're against something, why would you constantly glorify it?
Yeah.
If you're against guns, and you like to utilize the phrase gun violence, then why do you consistently portray heroes using gun violence to solve problems? So
Right.
what Hollywood people will say is, well, that's fantasy. Okay. Again, why are you glorifying it? What are
Right.
fantasies? Fantasies are a way of indulging our minds in what we're interested
Right.
in
Right.
what we want to do. So Hollywood says, well, it's a fantasy. Well, you're fantasizing about gun violence.
Right.
You fantasized about gun violence well enough to write an entire 2 hour movie about it.
Right.
You, the actor, fantasized about gun violence enough to delve into the role in a convincing fashion.
Right. And to accurately portray a lot of things.
Yeah,
about it.
exactly. And the other thing that frustrates me is you'll hear these, especially these super rich guys like Liam Neeson. They'll talk about how, well, the police are here to protect us, and you don't need a gun, and I'm portraying extraordinary circumstances. Well, let's look at the Taken movies. He portrays a CIA operative who would essentially be an extraordinary person
Hmm.
being thrown into extraordinary circumstances. Um, so, what about the average person getting thrown into an extraordinary circumstance?
Right. Are
Is
they
this?
not allowed to protect themselves?
I guess not. But
They
Liam
they
Neeson, who probably lives on a huge gated property with all kinds of security and has a house so big that even if you wanted to hurt him, you probably couldn't fight him.
He'd
What
have to
about that?
act through his panic room door.
Yeah, basically. You know, if if I had the ability to pay other men to carry guns on my behalf,
Rosie O'Donnell style. Yeah.
yeah, Rosie O'Donnell style, if I had that, I might feel comfortable not being armed.
Yeah.
But
Right.
let's be honest. The very first movie Taken is about his daughter going to Europe and being captured and sold as a sex slave.
Right.
We know for a fact that this does happen.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. It wouldn't even make a good movie if that part wasn't actually real.
yeah, exactly. But in this particular fantasy, the writer, producer, director, and actors all fantasized about a legitimate possible situation and then placed an extraordinary character into that situation and gave him a buttload of guns to solve his problems with.
Right.
You
And
know,
fancy violence moves of all sorts.
yes, yeah,
Mostly guns, though. Mostly guns and gun violence. Well, I mean, Hollywood is one of these things, like you said, like Liam Neeson lives in this gated community. We can't get to him. We can't even, nobody could hope to actually pull a gun on the guy in his own house. um, Hollywood kind of sits in this place societally where they're kind of untouchable too. They call the shots about what they do, and they really have very little oversight. And there's no way for the average person or for a small group of the average people to actually be able to talk any sense to these people. It would take a large portion of the population deciding they were going to boycott these movies, which is a huge part of American culture. For people to stop watching movies and stop going to the theater would be, a huge sacrifice of our culture for that. So it's not something that is likely to happen on a large scale. So we can't even really speak to Hollywood and say this is what you guys are doing wrong. Stop being dumb like this. Stop being hypocritical. If you believe something, great, make
well,
movies like that. And we
I
can't really
believe
do much about Hollywood.
I believe that we can, and
Okay.
the movie The Interview is a perfect example.
Okay.
Um, the something like the week before the movie The Interview came out, Seth Rogen made a derogatory comment about Chris Kyle. Now, Chris
Hmm.
Kyle is an American hero. You
Right.
know, Chris Kyle is a man who dedicated his life to service to his country and his fellow man. And Seth Rogen made a derogatory comment, and no joke, the interview went from basically a grade A major motion picture release to an instant Netflix release.
Well, I would say that had more to do with the Sony hack than anything, and the violent threats that were made on the theaters, because that hack got blamed on North Korea. Whether they actually did it or not is really, that's kind of up to your personal preference. But there were violent threats made towards the theaters that carried it. They basically said, we're going to attack any theater, whoever this unnamed group was, is going to attack any theater violently that showed it. So there was quite a few things surrounding the interview, but the Chris Kyle thing was certainly an aspect to it.
Well, and taking that into account, I follow tons of veterans groups, and there's actually one that's centered around movies. And there's been repeated discussions on there between myself and other veterans about individuals who have done or said things like Liam Neeson, like Seth Rogen, et cetera, et cetera. And the veterans community, again, took the lead. And you just see post after post after post of guys saying, and girls, guy and girl veterans saying, I didn't know that.
Right.
I just looked it up. I'll never watch their stuff again.
That's good, and that's definitely the sort of thing that makes an impact. And the nice thing that we have also is online media, and we have conscientious people making good content online. So it's not like we have to completely sacrifice our intake of media and the media we enjoy to boycott stuff. I mean, maybe we won't see a movie we thought we might want to see, but there's definitely good alternatives. So I think these days we have a new entertainment's been democratized. It's
Yes,
accessible and
and
creatable by the masses.
even though I don't know these guys personally, I'd like to take a minute to give an example of how we, the conservative people, can begin to override this incredible power that Hollywood has. There's a group called Article 15 Clothing and
Okay.
Ranger Up Military Apparel, two separate groups.
Okay.
They combined resources and then uh, crowdsourced funding, and now we actually have a movie. It's going to be a comical zombie movie, but it's got something in excess of $1 million budget,
Nice.
and it's all a bunch of Rangers, Medal of Honor recipients, uh, Marine Scout snipers, actual men are the lead roles. Actual
That's cool.
Rangers, actual military guys are the lead roles in this movie.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, and it's going to be fantastic. For instance, I was watching a TV show the other day, and I was really proud of them because they got something. I can't remember what it was, but they got it really right about a particular gun. It was what the FBI has issued. One of the characters identifies some fake FBI agents by the fact that they drew weapons that weren't Glock or SIG.
Wow, that's
So,
impressive. That doesn't happen
yeah.
very often.
So I was all happy and impressed with the TV show, and then I watch I watch the main character double tap uh, two guys and then fire three more shots from a revolver. So 7 rounds out of a gun that carries six. Now there are revolvers out there, large caliber revolvers that hold 7 and 8 rounds.
Yeah, with a
Uh,
large caliber revolver, you're gonna have a hard time double tapping too, though.
oh yeah. So he was double tapping them, and then he fired 3 rounds in a row after he double tapped two guys. So
For those that don't know the terminology, a double tap is when you fire 2 rounds in rapid succession, but drop them both in the same area. So it takes a
exactly,
lot of skill with the wrist and kind of managing that recoil. And it's not really very easy with a higher caliber weapon because of the intense amount of recoil that comes out of something like a 45 or bigger. 9 millimeters are typically used very commonly for that sort of technique. So just a little
yeah,
backstory for people there.
pretty fundamental, but getting 2 rounds off in a half a second out of a 357 Magnum is little. unrealistic. Now there are guys that can do it because in reality, it's all about training and technique.
Right. And strength.
But
Part of
I
training.
won't even say strength. Strength does play a part. I won't argue that point. Um, but mostly it's technique and
Right.
training.
Yeah.
And you just sit back and you watch these ridiculous things happen. You watch you watch supposedly tactically trained FBI agents entering a room with the slide locked to the rear, indicating that the weapon is empty, completely empty. You know, uh, looking over the top of the sights. Sure, you're looking over the top of the sights, but your slide's locked to the rear.
Right.
And
You got a toy gun in your hands, pretty
yeah,
much.
pretty much you got a hunk of a very, very high tech paperweight.
Right.
Until you drop that slide and pop in a fresh mag, not necessarily in that order, that's all you really got.
Right. That's one of the cool things. I mean, social media and crowdfunding and just online community has really, sounds like to me, been what brought these two groups together and enabled something like this to take place. So that's really cool. And maybe we can do another one of these whenever that movie drops or is about to, and we can kind of discuss it and encourage people to support that. Um, something let's we kind of gone over our time limit a little bit here, but I definitely want to encourage people to go check out Ted's Facebook page. It's a great place for discussion, and Ted is one of these guys who likes to take the devil's advocate and look at things from the opposite side as well. And that's what we're going to try to do when we do these segments. Sometimes we didn't do it too much this time, but try to take the opposite approach as well, just to kind of flesh out an idea from both sides. It's always a valuable thing to do. Um, one more thing I wanted to talk about before we go that has suddenly slipped to my mind. What was it? Um, No, I guess we touched on it with the social media and the crowdfunding thing. That's what I wanted to kind of bring it back to. So, no matter what side of this issue you're on, like we said, we can understand some people aren't comfortable with guns, and that's understandable. Uh, but what we're really talking about here is the bigger picture of we don't want to support or feel like we're obligated to support an industry that feels like it can lie to us and be hypocritical. So there are plenty of options out there. There's great entertainment on Netflix and YouTube that is not from the big uh, the big Hollywood places that might be doing things that we just don't feel is moral or correct. So I want to encourage people to get involved with online media, get involved with online community, because there's great stuff happening out there. You can find like-minded people and put together a project that's bigger than what you could do on your own, just like these two groups have done, these two veteran groups. So thanks for coming on, Ted. This is fun. Thanks for being the big floating, scary, talking, dark head in a room.
Well, the last time I was on video, I was the scary, bearded, silent person in the room, and it's really what I know how to do best.
Hey,
Uh,
you got a lot of fans out of that.
yeah, that was kind of comical, realistically. Uh,
That's the cool thing about online media. You don't necessarily have to agree with somebody 100% to enjoy the content they put out. There's plenty of people that are good friends of mine online that we don't see eye to eye on some things, and either we discuss those in a friendly manner, or it's just we don't even talk about that stuff. We talk about other stuff. So it's important for even people who aren't completely like-minded 100% to get together on the things that they do agree on, because being torn apart by our differences is not any way to make a society work well.
I
So
completely agree. Um, you know, even though I've been out of the Marine Corps longer than I was actually in at this point, I always fall back on the veterans community and my Marine Corps experiences for lessons of life, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things
Absolutely.
that I've seen is that now that um, now that there's been so much change in the military community, it is starting to create strife. And the thing that is holding the military community together is the loyalty and the honor that they've always lived by.
Mm-hmm.
So, just like in Vietnam, where you might have a racist white fighting right beside a racist black, the veterans community is still standing beside each other, whether they agree on same-sex marriage or not, whether
Right.
they whether they agree on abortion or not. They're still standing beside each other, and it's really important that you know, regardless of what it is that you want to accomplish, whatever change you want to institute, that you find ways to find common ground.
Right.
Uh, this is the most divided the country's ever been.
It's true.
I do not know of a time in history, possibly including the Civil War, where we had so much division. And,
Yeah.
you know, now we're divided over gay marriage. We're divided over refugees coming to America. We're divided over uh, Democrat and Republican. We're divided over Christian and atheist, over everything and anything under the sun. This country's divided, and that's never good. It's never good,
Mm.
you know. So when I run into a veteran or a civilian who has a belief that follows along with one of my beliefs, I definitely encourage that as the main source of communication, the main
Yeah. It's ideal.
subject of conversation. And I'm kind of putting together, a speech off the top of my head here. So I apologize for the stunting and stuttering, but in reality, if you have a gay couple who is pro gun and you do not believe in same sex marriage, but you're pro gun, well, you should probably be as accepting as possible of the difference so that you can work together to magnify and exploit the thing you do agree on.
It's true. It's true.
That's where we're failing as a society is nowadays if we don't agree on one minute detail, we automatically just start fighting.
Right. And that's one cool thing about the online community because you can focus your communication around a particular topic with a group of people. So it makes it a little trickier in my experience to really come across that thing that divides you. It takes a lot more work than it does in face-to-face conversation. So I'm not promoting being an isolated like hermit and just being online or anything. You definitely got to get out and talk to real people, but getting involved in an online community is a great way to strengthen that voice. Well, thanks, Ted. This has been awesome. It's always fun talking to you, whether we record it or not. And hopefully people find this interesting, and we'll see what feedback happens. And if there's topics people would like us to discuss, definitely post those in the comments, tweet those at us, and we'll go from there. And Ted, just look up for his page, get on Facebook and look up Tedcore and the Voice of Reason, and you'll find his page. So thanks a lot, Ted, and you have a good one, man. We'll catch you next time.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.